Is it recording?
It is recording.
All right, here we are on The Blind Man in Black. And I can't begin to express how deeply honored and excited and thrilled. There's so many. Here we are with Shelly Covert. She is the tribal spokesperson for the Nevada City Rancheria, Nisenan Tribe, also the executive director of CHIRP. Is that correct?
That's right.
You're a musician, and we're about to learn so much more about you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Brian.
I just, how are you holding together through this chaos, this shit, COVID-19, the political mess, and how are you holding together?
Well, the funny thing that I'm noticing, and I don't know if it comes with age, is that within our tribe and our family, like, it's not always unlike this. I think that when you're from people who, not to bang this drum all the time, but like culture, and erased culture, that people are just kind of used to rolling with it, and,
Right.
And it's just another thing to roll with. And I feel that sometimes the people in our family are so much more prepared for, like, when the lights go out, or maybe not my family personally, because I'm such a baby compared to my cousins and my aunties and, my mom, the way they were raised, and not having any of these things up until the 1960s sometimes, that you just kind of roll with it. And it's an awful thing that's like, here, just keep piling it on and they're still okay. So it's very interesting, that dynamic, that I think sometimes people who, are used to living with lights and having TV and internet and all this stuff, that it doesn't seem to impact our tribal community quite as hard as it impacts some other folks. And I guess that's a good and bad. I don't know, but it's been okay. We've been being very careful. A lot of the tribal members have had COVID. Luckily, they didn't die and they came through it okay. Some that will have lasting effects. But, for the most part, I think we're just kind of rolling with it. But probably most people are, I would assume. I don't know.
Right. Well, there's some like community resiliency is what I'm hearing. It has been built up truly through the centuries.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So thank you. I appreciate you checking in with us and with that. And, we should let those watching. And by the way, is my headspace okay? Am I cut off or?
No, you look good.
Okay.
Like I was saying, I love the glasses. It's just like, you look so.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was funny. Before we started, I was telling Shelly, I was saying, listen, I wear these sunglasses. It's not like a fashion statement. It's the fact that, like, the glare from the computer and the lights in the room, like, hurt my eyes. So I appreciate you understanding. And you wanted me to mention something.
Yes, my face.
That you have a chipped tooth. And how did that happen?
Yeah, I'll just show it. I have no idea. I think there was a filling that's probably been there for 30 years. And it got a little chip, and then just the rest of it came off. So I'm in process of, I hate the dentist so much, and I'm in process of making an appointment. I haven't even made an appointment yet, but I can't not smile. And so it is the way it is. And, I just can't glam out about it because it's a big chunk of my front tooth gone. So, but, I after a bit, I forget about it. So, but I don't always look this way. But
well, I want to thank you so much, because you could have said, you know what, I got the chipped tooth. I don't want to do this right now. Yeah. And I'm so honored and grateful that you're like, fuck it. I'm going to do it. And that's kind of, I feel about this, what this podcast is. It's just, I'm just saying, fuck it. Let's do it.
Just do it.
It is what it is. And, people like it or they won't, whatever happens. I don't give a shit, whatever.
You get the real when it's like this, just when you just do it, you just bring it, and that's the way it is.
Exactly. That part of this is I wanted to do this, my own Gandhian kind of experiment in truth. And this is like a perfect example. It's like, you're being real. You're not hiding it. You're embracing it. I love it.
just gonna go with it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So let's talk about like where you began, like how, tell us about the early days. What was it like growing up in Nevada City, or did you move around? What happened?
No, I'm like, I was born in Grass Valley in the Miners Hospital.
Okay.
I guess, no, not the, I guess they didn't call it the Miners Hospital, Memorial, Grass Valley Memorial Hospital. I don't know what they even call it nowadays, but in Grass Valley, not very exciting, that's for sure. Didn't move around, didn't go anywhere. Like most of the family were born locally here in our homelands, where that long string of Nisenan people in this place have been always. And while when I was younger, I just thought it's so uncool, so uncool, like just to be from Grass Valley and have such a small town upbringing with not, I mean, now that I know all the labels, like not a lot of culture here, not a lot of, different, we're all kind of the same here. And from that, of course, being under the persona of the gold rush all the time, and the high school Nevada Union Miners, and just not, I guess it's taken me so many years to, I'm even lisping, so many years to it's taken me so many years to understand, like, trying to look at my culture from within a culture is really hard. And to look at yourself as a small town girl from Grass Valley from within that small town is also really difficult. And of course, as I get older, I can appreciate all of that so much more than I did when I was young. I just probably like most small town people, you just want to get out of the small town. Like, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? I don't know. But ended up staying. We spent some time in Hawaii when I was younger. Through it with my Covert line, ended up going over there, and a lot of the family followed. And then I didn't even understand, like my grandma had said we were part Hawaiian, and like didn't know the connection, didn't understand when I was there. I used to, I see now it was a privilege because I'm so light. I get teased all the time in my family because I'm a light-skinned Indian person and a lighty whitey, and they got the loving teasing that you put up with your family. And in Hawaii, I got called Howley Girl all the time and chased home, and so I feel good that I was able to experience at least a little slight bit of the discrimination that a lot of my darker skinned relatives have to deal with the burden of that, I guess is the way you could say it. I got a little glimpse of what it was like just to be, it doesn't matter what you do or who you are, or how nice you are. If you're the wrong skin in the wrong place, you got a lot of baggage to carry. But but just, Brian, been here forever, not a whole lot of seeing the world till I was older, and not a lot of experience other than this place.
Was there an urge to, like, I mean, what I'm kind of fascinated about is, was there a point that you were either resisting your indigenous community or identity, and were you thinking, you know what, I just want to get out of here, fuck it, I want to go to the city? Or were you like, was there always like a pull to like, this is my home, this is what, like, was there a transition, or what was it like?
That too is really interesting put that way. I don't think it was like trying to escape the culture. The culture was so invisible to me. I always just thought our family was weird. Like we did things differently. And I just thought we were different and weird. I didn't understand the depth of, it still dawns on me today. Like it's really a hard concept to understand, that you've been from one place for as long as anybody can remember in the living memory, and as long back as like way before, written documents here, like been here forever. And at the same time, wow, that's really weird. At the same time, there's this integrated responsibility to this land specifically. And I don't think I could have named that when I was younger. It's just like, it was more of taking care of the older family members and not bailing on the burial sites. Like, you know, even when we went to Hawaii, that left my mom's parents here, and she wasn't here, and that was a big deal. It's like, well, you're not around feeling. So I don't think it was because I didn't realize that this culture, that I was so deeply part of it. And I could only see it in the functioning moments that it functions as the culture, like the protocols, what you do and don't say. If somebody older than you is talking to you, you listen, you're respectful. There's all these things, and maybe all families have this, I'm not sure, but there's this level of responsibility that I was wrapped in that I didn't know was the culture itself. I saw, you know, the ways that my grandma, they would do things like if somebody hit a deer on 49, they would bring it to grandma and she could just, hang it up and skin it and bleed it in 2 seconds flat. And I always was, you know, when I was younger, I was a little bit embarrassed about that. Like, not my other high school friends didn't have like deers hanging outside their grandma's door necessarily, you know, so I don't think that it was in that way that I was escaping it. I think I had it. I just didn't know. I couldn't identify it. It was more, I think, when I was young, it's just that Grass Valley was just such a small place. And it was, you know, LA, Hollywood, all the stuff you long for when you're from a small town. I don't know. But not that I did feel bad. I'm light. Nobody knows that. Even today, nobody knows I'm a Native American person by looking at me, for the most part. I have really dark, almost black eyes, and I guess the typical high cheekbones or whatever. But yeah, it's really interesting. And this is part of like the problem, is that when you're so erased, that the only culture that's left that's visible to anybody, including yourself, is so deeply embedded in the culture itself that it's not something you can point out and identify. Now I can look back at my grandparents and my family and go, oh, that's culture. Oh, that's culture. Oh, I see it right there. Oh my gosh, they're doing this ceremony that has been passed on. How is that not broken? And I kind of stand in amazement at how did that.
Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Oh, are you losing me?
Just for a second. Just
okay.
for a second. Yeah.
Okay, I'm here.
Oh, good. Okay. You know, one of the things that I lived in Oaxaca for a while, in Oaxaca, Mexico, and I stayed in a village, Teotitlan del Valle, and it's a Zapotec village. And one of the things that one of my friends there, she created the tapetes. They're like the rugs that are very famous for that area, and it's like kind of it's kind of a mural, I guess, but it's a story about her community. There's a snake that comes out of the Zapotec ruins, and I guess the legend is that if you see the snake, you'll have a long life. And the snake is kind of coming from the Zapotec ruins in the background, coming to the foreground. And then there's like a house, and then there's like the telephone lines coming through it. And it's called Dos Mundos, two worlds. And what she felt is this kind of feeling, not knowing where she really was. She has a strong indigenous roots in the Zapotec community, but she also is caught between, you know, the modern world and capitalism and and all of the things that brings. So did you ever feel like that pull, or that kind of you know, I'm not sure where I should be?
You know, because, you know, we're not on a reservation here, and that we have all been, for the most part, at least on the outward facing side, successfully assimilated. We all speak English, you know, we all do the American thing that you're supposed to do, I guess. So I was never, again, like, there was no solid, visible physical place like that was, and then something else on the outside that wasn't. But what was there that really reflects what you're talking about is the internal struggle of this deep, oh man, like deep knowing of what's right and wrong. And, you know, just because the other kids are going to jump off the cliff, are you going to go jump off the cliff too, Shelly? Just because other people are doing this or that, does that mean you're going to do it too? And then tied in that is the responsibility to, you know, for me, especially, it's the animals, the way we treat animals, and roadkill, quote unquote, just the land, the water. There was really, my grandfather, a few times, like I would be getting ready to go swim. It happened actually in this instance a lot. Like I was going to go stay at my friend's house, and we had our swimsuits and towels, and she lived just off of, I think it's, oh dang, I can't remember the name of it. It's right off the freeway. Like on the road, when you take off 49 and you're heading into Nevada City, there's that creek there. And my grandpa said, you know, I wouldn't swim in that water if I were you. And I'm like, why? And he said, there's just some of the dirtiest water around. And I was like, oh, and because he said that, I absolutely could not get in the water, because I would never disrespect my grandfather and go against anything that he said. He told me one time, because I was always just cooked out in the sun with baby oil. As soon as the sun came out, that was my thing. I'm out laying in the sun, and you know, oh, skin cancer runs in our family. I wouldn't lay out in the sun if I were you. And I was like, oh, that ended my career in sun tanning. And you know, went to again a friend who lived at Lake Wildwood, and he told me, do not get in that water and swim. And I never asked him even why, because it would have been disrespectful, especially if my mom was there. She'd always kick me or pinch me or something, because that's not what you do. You don't question your elders, you just say, okay. But it's, you know, I later realized it's because a lot of these reservoirs are on top of our burning grounds. So we're cremating society. So, you know, the cremations of the ancestors are there, and you don't swim in them, I guess, you know, for his way of thinking. So it was really more of those kind of ways. And then I would be kind of upset about that, is like, well, how come everybody else gets to and I don't? You know, it sounds so childish now that I'm older, but it was really those kind of impactful things. Because it's all so torn up because of the gold rush, and things are so different, and we're not corralled on a reservation somewhere, that it's all over the landscape, and it would pop up in these really strange moments that would just come up and like really impact my life, especially as a teenager, you know, that I feel that. And then is asking my grandparents, like, about like the magical way of, I was asking them about magic, like, tell me about the magic, Grandpa. I wanted to know the spirituality and all that stuff so much. And then my grandma would just laugh and say, you girls couldn't even handle a day without your electricity and your running water and your washing machines and all this kind of stuff. And so, you know, also then not romanticizing the Native American life the way that, you know, sometimes it feels like people think it's sort of like a fad or like the thing, or can you pass on some, you know, Native American wisdom, Shelly? Can you come bless this or that, you know? And for me, it's not, it's so real that it kind of took the fun out of things for me, where I couldn't see and do a lot of those things in the way that my friends could, because I had this deeper sense of responsibility to the land and to the place and to the people who are literally buried all over you know, this territory. And so it was that kind of thing where I just kind of let the air out of a lot of my earlier life, because one example, my friends were all digging for arrowheads and I was there, and I wanted to stay. There were maybe some boys involved, you know, and it was kind of the cool place to be. And then, you know, going, I should not even be here. This is not okay. Those kind of things, you know, really that pulled me in that place you're talking about, into those two worlds of like, you know, I'm having fun, but who am I? I can't be doing this. This isn't okay.
I want to ask about I watched a video that was on the Nevada City Rancheria. It was a tribal elder speaking about, I think before colonization, there were over 3,000 Nisenan
Oh,
tribal members. And then when by 19, like I want to say mid 1930s, there were like 19 on record.
mhm.
Is that accurate? Is it something, am I off?
It's we're conservatively estimating now as we keep finding other sources and really digging into those numbers. So in our territory is probably more like 9,000.
Okay.
And then at one point in time on the census, there were 18 left. And that does not, another thing is that the families, if they knew somebody was coming to count the Indians, a lot of people just evaporate. There was no trust there. By having your name on some paper was not okay, was not safe. I mean, it lingers. These sorry, mealy mouth. These are some of the things that exist today. They don't pick up the phone. They don't answer the door if it's a stranger. I mean, and I'm always like, again, one of those things, God, like our families are so weird. Like, I don't know, other people don't act like that. And then understanding the seeds of these actions, like why they act that way, and then it still exists in 2020 because those strings stretch, man. Those, I guess you call that historic trauma, right? Those, they stretch for decades and they affect every generation. Ugh, made me kind of emotional. I think I protect my daughter so well, and I shelter her a lot. uh, and that she still says the things that I say, like worried about money, worried about, well, what's going to happen, and has all these fears. I'm like, how did she get those? I was so careful in raising her that, yes, honey, you can fly, you can do whatever you want. I want to give her all the wings and like all the magic sticks she could possibly have to be who she can be. And yet then I hear, oh, mommy, I'm so worried. One of her main words is, I'm worried. I worry that this, I worry that that. And I'm like, wow. And it just, because we all do. And that's like the center. It's the center that you can't shake. And I wasn't the one that was killed here. I'm not the one that was running for my life. And yet I still have those seeds in my tummy that not up, and I assume it's because my mom does, and I assume she does because her mom did, and and on and on. But it's I would love to learn how to break those cycles and not have that happen anymore. But it's I keep kidding around saying we need a room of like psychologists and psychiatrists and scientists. We got to figure this out somehow or another. But it is that just this. It's one of the things that absolutely survives. Well, I wish it was language or an ancient ceremony, but instead we get the worry and the fear that sticks in your tummy and makes the family and the further generations broken, and it's kind of tragic actually. But yeah, those numbers, I mean, is exactly why. The truth of those numbers is why, I guess, that my daughter can actually say these things where she's never experienced it in her life, and I've sheltered her so tightly. And yet that's why, is because our grandparents literally like ran for their lives, and the horrible things that happen are just they're somehow still in us, which is just not what I want. I don't want that. I don't want that. I want the good. I want the magic. I want the community and the beauty. And so much of it is gone that it's just, and this is what remains. It's like, that's not fair, dang it. Like, who do I take to court over this?
When was there a time that you had these, when you discovered these, like those statistics, or it could be those statistics, or even something else, something that was very beautiful that strengthened your sense of responsibility? What happened? Like, tell us about, like, when you were younger and you were discovering those things, or did you know them from the beginning? Were your grandparents saying, this is what happened? How did that all unfold?
Yeah, no, they never said it that way. Um, they would hint at things. And again, because it was, just ask, like I have recordings of my grandpa talking, and like, why didn't I ask him like a follow-up question? Because it would have been, I suppose, seen as rude or disrespectful. So I did, I watched it unfold it feels like, a maze or like some big puzzle, and I've got a few pieces, and I'm always trying to put it back to, even just for myself, not even to share out to, the larger community, but just for myself, like trying to make sense of these things. A lot of those moments came from little bits of history I would find, and I would be able to pair that with something that my grandpa or grandma told me. One of those moments was, so when my grandpa was alive and somebody in the family or an adjacent family passed away, like he had 6 girls, so my mom and her sisters, and they would always be on the phone, like talking to each other, like, there's a funeral coming up, who's going to take dad? And however, I'm an only child, so I don't know the sibling like thing that siblings do with each other. And I remember them being on the phone, like, who's going to take dad? And, they're trying to figure it all out. And like, that was a center part of what just was like, grandpa went to funerals, period. And I was looking through some old historic documents, probably 20 years ago. And like, most of it's just random quotes from people who are looking at the Indian people from their lens of maybe deep Christianity or another culture, another country. And it's a really hard, ugly lens, because they're narrating and interpreting our people, our family, and I know some of these people that they're talking about, and talking about how dirty and disgusting they are and how stupid they are, and that the culture that they have is like satanic or whatever. Like, and now that I'm older, I'm like, you had no idea what you were looking at. You had no context and no experience of what the hell you're talking about. Like, you don't know. But that's the residual history that I was reading as a younger woman, especially. And so trying to wade through that and find bits of history that have been lost, because I want to know place-based stuff. We've always been here, and there's some famous person who now has a road sign after them, or like Searles or Englebright. Like, these are all people who were here. They came and made their lives and their livelihoods here on land that was never, like, the Indians didn't be like, hey, come on over and take our land, this is great, like this joyous thing. And so I'm slogging through these people where I'm trying to get history, but yet having to read their narrative stuff, for just to be kind. And within all this,
you can say how you really feel.
I know my mom might watch this, and I've
understand.
had such a potty mouth lately, Brian. I'm like, F this and F that, and blah, blah, blah. And I've really been trying to keep a container on it, because.
All right. Well, then I apologize as well if your mom is, because my mouth.
You can let it fly. You won't get in trouble. See.
Okay.
Yeah, I will. So you'll have to double your curses tonight on behalf of me, please. So
I will.
I'm slogging through, these historic pieces.
Horse shit.
And thank you. Thank you very much.
Lies, yeah.
And I find this one sentence that says they said the Indians from Nevada City, it was like really bad weather, and the Indians from Nevada City were all packing up and heading down to the Dobbins area in the middle of this storm. And somebody was like, what the hell are they doing? And someone asked them, and they said, there's a funeral, so-and-so died, who was a leader, or one of the lead family members. And and they said, well, why don't you go later? Why don't you, you're really going to go in this weather? And they said, because if we don't go, we forfeit all ties with their living family members. So I finally, when I've seen this, it's such a good example because I've seen this way. It's not just like grandpa was obsessed with funerals, like he loved going, you know, and then I find like these 2 sentences in this historic newspaper from, I think I read it in like the 100 years ago in Nevada County or something like that. And that little blip let me tie together these ends that I knew that we did that. I didn't know why grandpa did it. After he passed away, then among my mom and her siblings, one of them would always go. Who's going to go to the funeral? And then it wasn't who's going to take dad. So it was this probably a lighter thing, but who's going to go? It was more of a responsibility. Like one of them had to go and they would, you know, bicker, I guess I could say that, bicker amongst each other who was going to go. And then to find that in some historic writing from some random person who I really could care less about probably. And, you know, but then I found another piece of that missing puzzle that helped me piece something together. That was
it must be difficult, like, you know, hearing from a Western white lens of your own culture. It's like, I mean, you're like trying to sift through, you know, whatever their lens may be, which is obviously racist, and, you know, biased. And it must be really difficult to
and having to rely on that sometimes, like, you know, we don't have any fluent language speakers left. The language was taken from the people. Like if you spoke it, you know, when you went to Indian boarding school, which my grandpa did and all his siblings, and you were like, you were forbidden to speak the language and you would get beaten and all these horrible things, you know, that people are now learning about the Indian boarding schools. And then I'm so torn in the moments I'm in like these archives looking through linguistic people. Most of the men weren't even from here, so they weren't even speaking English as a first language, but they were here studying for their careers, you know, because they're a linguist and they're being sent by a university somewhere to study the people. And so half of me is like rejoicing in these documents, and then you have to again slog through this. Like, why does some anthropologist or linguist have to also narrate their personal opinions on the paper that I have to read? And like, I don't want my younger family members to have to read through that. I mean, I hate it enough on my own and I'm old. So, you know, it is a catch-22. It's like, you have to rely on their written stuff, and yet holding this secret, I guess it won't be a secret any longer, this secret, I don't want to say hate because I don't hate anybody, but it's screwed up. You know, it's screwed up. It's like, how is that even a thing? And why do I have to go through that? Again, makes me a little emotional thinking about it. You know, I've seen my relatives quoted in some of those things, and they get their quote like, oh, yay, they fished for it. They got what they needed, the linguist or the anthropologist or whoever it is. And then comes their narration about these people. And it's just, I guess it's my least favorite part. While at the same time, if I find a couple sentences like that, hooking the weird way my family is, and then these couple sentences that say, told me the cultural reason, that if some reporter hadn't asked that person and then written it in the paper, you know, talking about how weird that the Indians were walking around in this weather, you know, going for a funeral. So then again, I have to appreciate it, yet I don't always like it.
It must be confusing. I can imagine only imagine the emotions it must bring up.
Confusing is a good word. That's a really good word. And, you know, the other thing is, it's so strange. Listening with that reverence and how we are with our elders in the family, especially my grandfather, because he was from a long line of leading family, head family with all this responsibility. And believe he was a man. Talk about the old, like, stoic Indian guy. If his word was just, that's all you needed. If he said something, it was. That was the kind of person he was. Very kind, very responsible, tough as nails, just a badass. Bad, because he had to protect himself, I would assume, but he was a badass back in his day. And he's telling me things, and then I'd read something contrary to what he said in a book, like in high school. And I feared that my grandpa was wrong, you know? And then it took me almost a whole lifetime to be like, oh, wasn't grandpa that was, oh, I'm sorry, I'm so loud. Wasn't grandpa that was wrong. You know, it was not my grandfather that was wrong. We are an oral history, that we are less because we don't have the document to prove this or that, you know. That's, well, your things are just stories, Shelly. Like, they could have gotten it wrong after it was repeated so many times. Like the game of telephone is what they always use as their example. And like, obviously you don't understand what an oral history, a society based orally, is. It's like their memories were insane. They had those runners that would go from village to village and town to town here, and they would listen to an important event, and they would come back home, and they could mimic it word for word because they used their brains, and they didn't have, you know, computers and phones, paper and pen, I guess, to write it down, right? They that was their pride. And that, no, my grandpa actually wasn't changing the story. He would say it exactly as it is, and it's even reflected in the language. Like there's a way to say, oh, I wish I could remember, but you can say, there's a verb that's saying, I am seeing it, and I'm telling you that the sky is blue because I see it. And then a different word that says, I'm telling you the sky is blue because so-and-so said it was blue. Or, you know, and then the person listening can make their own judgments. If grandpa says the sky is blue because he's looking at it, they're like, oh, absolutely. Or if they say, you know, if I say, hey, Brian just said, you know, that there's a sale on down the road. And then if Brian tells a fib all the time, they'd be like rolling their eyes and like, oh, okay, you know, sure there is, oh, you know, and they make their own judgments on it. But that too was that conflict of what I knew from my family, like that absolute truth, and then reading in a book something opposite and being so scared that they were wrong. And it just, you know, grandpa was never wrong. Everything he said, I've been really having this magic around me where I find documents that pair with what he said, and I'm like, see, true, haha, look, he was right again, you know. It's just but yeah, absolutely, Brian, it's confusing. It's so confusing. And then the fight that you have to fight, like to tell people that they're wrong. And then of course there's this fear that goes with ever standing up against an official of any kind. Like that's still very much alive too. And so we just said nothing. And it's so sad, like the erasure, the absolute erasure of an entire culture, completely invisible. And then it's up to us to kind of bring it back to light, with all the fear. I mean, it's got to be some kind of like karmic test or something. It's like, how much can this person do? Let's give him the worst case scenario, genocide, you know, all this stuff, totally erase them and leave a few descendants, and let's see if they can like bring it back. Like, is it some big game show or something? You know, it's like, what do you, like, how much can we do? And the funny thing is that we're actually doing it. And I know it's because of our community. I know the people that are gathering here in these lands today are some pretty freaking phenomenal people, and amplifying our voice, you know, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's freaking confusing. Even now, I'm 50. How old am I? 54? Just turned 54.
Oh, when was your birthday?
October 10th.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess it wasn't just, but I really didn't get to party this year like I usually do. So
right.
I feel a little bit of sadness around that. But yeah, I mean, even now it's confusing for me. Let alone, can you imagine being a young person growing up and listening to your grandpa and being so proud, and then yet turning your head and like, oh, but that can't be true because they said we're extinct. You must be wrong, you know? Yeah.
I can only imagine. And, I think about it. I was born here,
Oh,
and
okay.
but I went to Nevada City Elementary, and I was thinking about this is I don't remember hearing about the Nisenan Tribe at all in Nevada City Elementary.
Yeah, probably
And
not.
I went to Deer Creek, and I don't remember it there either. And then I had to move away when I was about 10. I moved to upstate New York.
Mm.
And
Oh, wow, what a change.
yeah, it was that was not fun. My mom married someone that was, abusive and not fun, but but I think about that a lot, because when I came back, and when I went to Mexico, and I could just, this was my eyesight was fading, but I could see the colonialism, like the marks of it, and how deeply ingrained it was in the culture, not only just in the architecture, but in everything. And then I started looking at things with that lens. And then when I came back here, in 2009, and then I left to work on a master's degree
Mhm.
in 2010. But and then in 2013, I started to come back and really look at this, my community,
Yeah.
and then learning more about the indigenous roots here. And then I just started to become very angry. And I'll just give you an example. A couple of years ago, my work, I have to go to the Board of Supervisors chambers and do public comment often. And I can't see it anymore because I'm blind, but I could see it a little bit then, not in detail, but I could see the seal of Nevada County, and it just made me so angry to see this white miner
Mm.
just up there, and no, it's like a history was erased.
Yeah.
Like that's all there was.
Yeah.
And there's no mention of the indigenous people at all.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine, I mean, just the level of trauma in the DNA of the Nisenan people. I don't even know. I can imagine that there must be so many conflicting, confusing feelings. And I'm so grateful that you're sharing that. And because I get upset, because I'm like, why didn't I learn about this in school?
Right.
Why
Yeah.
wasn't this ever fucking discussed,
Yeah.
in our community? It's like, and I look at all the fucking architecture, and it makes me angry to see all these, it's a historic mining town, but I'm like, but it's drenched in blood.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the thing, and this is truly the person I am, that to move forward as people, I understand, like when we used to talk about the tribe being here, like there was some people's defenses go up. And so I'm like, I don't know why that is. Like, how could anybody possibly be afraid of us? And I think there's some, um, just a worry or an unknown, like if somebody has Indian rocks on their land, that they're not going to be able to like build a house, or it's going to get taken from them. And so there's a secrecy which surrounds them in their own fear, which is all that, none of this is founded. Like that's not true. That's not what happens. Private property, especially here, is private property and there's no fear around that. But like learning to, again, it's like walking through a landmine. It's like, what can you talk about and what can't you talk about? What are the things that I say that people's defenses just like this wall goes up? Well, my ancestor didn't kill anybody, and I don't know why I'm getting tossed in this cauldron of guilt type thing. And for a while, that especially when I was a bit younger, that silenced me, because I'm not a person who deals well with conflict until I get upset. And then it's just like, I guess I'm like the rest of my family in that way. It takes a lot to get me angry, or I'm not like hyper emotional and reactive, but there's also the truth, and like the truth and the justice and the responsibility that we have to the kids on this planet. Like, don't raise them in a bunch of lies. Like, how is that okay? And at what point did that become okay? And all there's just truth. All of us, none of us, I should say, killed anybody here. Nobody who's living here today that I'm aware of anyway, maybe in somebody's deep, dark closet, nobody here killed any of my ancestors. That is a fact. And nobody's blaming anybody for that. And nobody's asking for anything. We're not asking for anything from anyone. And at the same time, there's a history that's just the absolute truth that everybody should know. And that's where I have a hard time pasting things together, where it's just like the error, code keeps going off in my head, that we have these heroes that we've made heroes, like John Sutter, who was a horrible, violent, manipulative pedophile, a terrible person. Even take his name off, because I don't want to offend anybody who's related to him, who my actual family on my dad's side, my non-native side, is related to John Sutter directly, first cousins. I don't care. Facts are facts. We raised Columbus up. He was worse, depraved, like twisted violence and depravity that's off the scales for me to even, I can't conceive, because I'm not, I don't even have words to talk about it. It's like, well, I was talking with somebody the other day who's writing a horror novel, and she wanted to talk about some of the atrocities that had happened here. And it was the first time I went, oh, bang. It's like a horror novel. That's exactly my point of reference for all of this and these people. It's like Freddy Krueger. It's like anybody I can think of, like the zombie apocalypse, Freddy Krueger, all these yucky, icky, scary people. That was them. And we revere them. I drove by a preschool that was Sutter Preschool, and I was just like, really? Oh my gosh. Our sacred mountain, Estumyanim, which my grandfather said, today it's called the Sutter Buttes. It's very impolite to call it that, he said. Like, really? And now I see why. Like, you're going to call our most sacred mountain, where all life comes from for us, where we go when we die, and you're going to name it Sutter Buttes after that guy, and that's the piece where, until we can rectify that, like as parents, as adults, to say, if we can all say that, even if we're not the one teaching these false histories, that we are all standing by and watching it happen. I don't know the first thing about how to make that stop, really, myself, but we are all complicit in some way. Just at the very least, I'm not going to say anybody owes anybody anything, but we should at the very least stop teaching lies. Stop lying to the children and making up this false history. If we could just take that one little piece, I think it would start us down the path of going in a better direction for everybody on this planet, because it is turning into this homogenized global society that I always heard about. There you go. There's another horror novel and sci-fi. That's where we're heading. And how do you stop that train? I would say you stop by lying to children. Let's stop lying to children. Could we just start there? That doesn't have anything to do with genocides or anything, let's just start there. Maybe my grandpa would be happy about that.
Yeah.
What do you guys do in your lifetime? Well, we stopped lying to the children. It's not a big button worthy, cookie worthy task.
Yeah. That's what, this is why I'm so glad you're here, is because that's what I desire so deeply, is to find truth wherever it is and amplify it I'm just so grateful that you're sharing this.
Thank you. Yeah, you just make it all way too comfortable to just like say what you want to say, Brian. Why is that? You got that face. You got that truth face. Just tell me like it is.
It's just, I just, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a culture of lies. America has been, and it's since inception has been a culture of lies. And, um, it hasn't changed, and it's only gotten worse, in some respects.
In some respects, that's absolutely true. Yeah.
But the truth is also being revealed as well. And I think a lot of youth are expressing that. And let's go back to youth a little bit. So let's talk about like, how did, I just want to kind of understand how you, from an early age, went from where you were and then went into a leadership position.
Well, it's in my family. Like we're a lot of the leadership here in Nisenan territory, not just Nevada City Rancheria folks, but the larger, and actually in a lot of the California tribes, especially the Northern California tribes, the leadership is by kinship. And so, I mean, literally, and that's part of the thing, like Grass Valley is so not cool, and like the responsibility of things is so not cool, having to always be the adult in the group or whatever, as I stated before. But my grandpa, was part of that. As people died, he had responsibility to families and family members. And then when he passed, it really fell on my mom. My mom was just sort of the one who kept in connection with everybody. And my Aunt Bertie, who I don't know how we're going to ever replace her. Oh, she's behind me on the wall. She's there in a painting that somebody did in the art, visibility through art for CHIRP. And she's there with Coyote, and she was very much Coyote style. She's passed now, but she knew every person in the tribe, whose kids they were. She'd say, "Who do you belong to?" And you could just see her tallying the genealogy in her head. Like that's something like, "Who are you? Who do you belong to?" That's very much the first lead question when you're talking within tribal families, to know who you're talking to. And she had that connection. She knew everybody, every generation. And it's because she was so dang nosy. She loved gossip. It was her thing. But talk about a missing piece now that she's gone. I don't know what we're going to do without her. I mean, obviously it's going to become much more technological, spreadsheets and phone numbers and literal genealogy charts and stuff, where she had the old way of just rolling up to people's houses and bringing them gifts and talking for days and days, and, and then moving on. And so, it comes from my mom. My mom was the first chairwoman of Nevada City Rancheria. And as she gets older and started getting older, and technology, I could do a lot of stuff on the computer that she couldn't do, and had my younger generation of going about things and finding information and gathering information and things like that. And, now that she's 74, I think she's going to be 75. It's more and more of it has fallen to me. And that's fine. It's hard for me to look at myself because I don't think anything about what I'm doing. It's because I have to. I try to find the perks every once in a while. I'm like, ooh, does any goodie come with that, eventually? Or if I do all that, do I get to go back to playing music and playing on my computer all the time? I play World of Warcraft on the computer. I'm a gamer, and so is my husband. And that life has been taken from me. And I feel a little bitter about that sometimes, but, it's this responsibility. And so, but also I can look within myself, because it's not something I don't enjoy the spotlight in that way. I've played in a band since I was like 14, and I always got teased like, oh, Shelly's got a boyfriend. Well, the guys could have all their girls and it made them cool. If anybody paid any over attention to me, I got teased about it. And so it was always like, I'd just try to sink back in the background and play my bass, you know, and I've never, I mean, I love people. I love being in a party, and I love that. I love playing music and being the instigator of a party in that way. But being in the spotlight of anything is not my desire. I'm not doing this for fame and glory and fortune. Obviously not fortune, fame and glory in any way, shape, or form. I do it because I have to. And I don't want it to fall to my daughter someday. And so all that being said, sometimes I wonder, I just, and I have this desire, could we just get it over with? Because I have a life to go back to. And at the same time, I have deep reverence for all of the people in our ancestry who suffered and died. And I owe it to them as well. And I don't want to go to the spirit world and feel like I haven't done everything that I can do, to, at least in some part, like fix that screwed upness of what happened. And at the same time, it also gives me, because I feel like I'm pretty responsible and doing what I need to do with like hardly anything, no tools, no bag, no, whatever. So it gives me a really nice way to look at other leaders and say, why are you doing what you're doing? And why aren't you giving a little bit more? And do you actually give a big flying, you know what? Could you please say that for me? Do you give a big flying
fuck?
Thank you. About the people that you are representing? Where is your heart? Where's your responsibility? Like just as humanity, like to the animals, to the earth, like, is it just a job? Do you really care? And like, when is the change coming? Because I'm not here to just throw my life to the wind. I want to go play World of Warcraft. I want to go play in my band. I want to hang out with my family. And yet I feel like there's, if everybody took a little slice of this responsible pie, then more people could have fun and maybe they'd be less mad. I don't know. But it's a strange way that it happened and felt to me. And I am absolutely down to keep this up for as long as I can anyway. I don't know how long I can burn at this speed. Friends and, everybody in the work says, you got to take out this self-care, quote unquote thing that I'm just like, I keep hearing about this mythical self-care thing. I live on Red Bull. That's my self-care. So it's horrible, right? It's awful. But yeah, that's how, it wasn't anything I ever chose to do or had on my list in high school of like, gee, you know what I'm going to do is, that wasn't at all. It just, things land the way they land. And I couldn't live with myself if I didn't do it and do it as much as I could.
But tell us about, had there been times, what has the weight of that responsibility been like? It sounds so tremendous and I'm assuming overwhelming sometimes.
Oh yeah, don't get me all emotional. I don't think about stuff in this way very often, because what am I going to do about it? Go cry somewhere, probably, maybe kick the dog, beat the parents, I don't know. I joke. I have a really sadistic sense of humor. I hope if you don't know me, I'm not really going to go kick my dog and beat my parents. I don't know. There we go again, back to the very first part of the conversation, Brian, is that, the people in my family I can hold a lot. I'm not near the breaking point. I really enjoy the moments where I get to have fun. I've met a lot of great people. Some of the CHIRP team volunteers that have stepped up, share the load, that have really, that's helped. I'm actually getting paid now in my position as executive director, which before all of this work was coming from the pockets of my own family, and there are no pockets, like there's nothing in there. So like really, literally, you know, I mean, we're on the open train here, but I almost lost my house a few years ago. You know, I've had our electricity shut off because I have to weigh, my mom is what she always says, she's the best at robbing Peter to pay Paul. And sometimes you drop the ball and whoops, you get close to, you know, losing it all, I guess. I don't know. But, you know, it's better than that. It's financials are actually firming up for me a tiny bit this year. And we just did a project. I'm learning how to do all this kind of, I have no relationship with finances because I've never, ever had any money, nor has anybody in my family. So I'm learning all this, and it's good. And now that I just have a little bit, I never think of money anymore. Like when you're constantly thinking of money, you constantly think of money. And now that I just have enough to pay my mortgage and pay my bills, and now my parents are getting older and I'm trying to help them because mom gets like $900 a month from Social Security. That's not enough for a person to live on. You know, luckily we all live together. But that has been a tremendous help. So it's taken, I guess that's it. It's like steam valves. You take a little pressure off over here. Okay, now I've gained some capacity over there because now I don't have to worry about that. Like, okay, the lights are getting paid every month. That's a great thing. Now I have all this capacity over here that was taking up before because I was like, oh my God, like, this is not good. You know, we're heading for the dead end. Uh-oh, people. And I came to that point where I realized, because I didn't want to take the money. I'm like, I could use that money for this language program or doing this or doing that. And then I realized, whoa, if I sink, if I go down, we're all going down. Everybody in the tribe, the hopes of everything that we're doing, you know, and I'm not saying this is some big neon, yay, Shelly, because I'm all that. It's just a literal fact. If I go down, I take everybody with me, and that's not okay. And I have to stay afloat. So I don't know, Brian. I mean, I've had my days where, yeah, I feel sorry for myself. You know, I'm like, I don't want to get up, you know, and I'm so not this person of being organized and going to meetings and speaking publicly. I'm just not that person. If anybody who knew me back in the day, like I'd be like, yeah, sure, to 20 people with no intentions on going anywhere but doing my own thing and playing in a band my whole life. That was my only job really, and just being my own free self. And so it's been a learning experience. I tell myself that all this responsibility, like you have so much in a lifetime, and all those years I had none were just stacking up, and now I have them now. So I don't know, I tricked myself into, but then this is my personality. When I'm okay, I'm okay. And I can take a lot and I can hold a lot. And I do have the idea though, this isn't going to go on forever. There's got to be some kind of end eventually. Hopefully it will be a positive end. You know, we were in federal court for 8 years and we thought that was going to be a good end too. And that didn't come out well. And after that, I thought it was kind of over then. And then I got this second wind and this second idea of like, I wonder, you know, what else we could do to get this. Obviously, this was stupid for this last 8 years. Thanks, federal government, that I love so much that you're my friend and you're going to help us. But, you know, I don't know. I don't know where it comes from. I mean, maybe it's love. Maybe it's all the animals I helped over my life that are dead now and they're like giving me back some energy. I don't know where it comes from, but I got to keep at it. You know, I mean, I really don't have an option. Can't just drop it all. Who would I give it to? Nobody. It just wouldn't be. So I don't know. I do feel sorry for myself sometimes though. I do. Like right now. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, I can only imagine I mean, it sounds stressful. It sounds really fucking stressful. I mean, just to have that enormous,
you know,
not only the responsibility of your community now, but your ancestors as well.
Yeah, not to load it on. I mean, I just keep thinking of like, if karma is real, like, was I like really bad in a past life and I'm paying for it now, or I'm just doing all the good now so I can just skate for like, I don't know how many coming lifetimes or whatever. But I have watched people around me who come in and they keep going, oh my God, it's so much. And I'm like, it is what it is, like poor Ember, I mean, sometimes she's just like, tonight she was a little frazzled and she's like, Shelly, there's so much. And I'm like, there's not, like, in comparison to what? Like next month, it could be 4 times as much. So let's not like get our panties in an uproar, right? but it's a lot. I don't know. Maybe I'm just built the way I am for this reason. Who knows? I don't know. It's a lot. I try not to delve into that kind of stuff that often because again, what am I going to do at it?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you mentioned earlier music. Let's talk a little bit about how music has, you know, driven your life, and also how has your indigenous roots, influenced your music?
Well, not until recently, it hasn't. I It's also an internal permission. Like I felt, another funny thing is like I'm not, like sometimes I feel like I'm waiting for somebody to give me permission to like engage in my culture. I feel like, oh, I'm not going to do it as good, or what if I do it wrong, or the big fill in the blank, what if, I don't know. But it hasn't been until recently, and really, I mean, I'll be honest, it's because my head is filling, especially at night when I'm dreaming. This happens to musicians when you write, or writers when they write, like stuff, you'll get this, it just like loads up in your head and you really have to get it out. And that's been happening. And I hope it doesn't go away. I'm going to knock on wood just in case. But if I need a song, like we do a spring song, or we have all these songs that are missing from the culture right now. And I just literally have a topic. It's kind of weird because I have to write in English and then get help translating it with the linguist. We're getting better and better at it. So I can do very simple things now. But the tunes are right there. And there's so many. So again, I feel like it's not me that, I don't think you'd really call it channeling, but like they've got to be coming from somewhere that I don't know why they're just in there. But that's been the main line to me producing cultural pieces that I've written myself lately, is because they're just in my head. But the music thing is so important. It's what keeps me, like, if the one thing that will send me kind of, like, all this other stuff I can handle, but the one thing that sends me off is when I don't get to play music. I start getting cranky. And it's just got to be my self-expression. I get whatever it is. Or if I'm not listening to it enough. And I listen to pretty hard rock, pretty loud, especially in my car. And that just is like my tank. I'm like, oh, there I go again. And that, luckily it's something easy like that and not something awful like heroin, or, which is actually some other horrible addiction that could happen. I'm so lucky that I haven't had to take that path in this life, like a lot of my family members have, to deal with pain. And I feel that I'm pretty lucky in so many ways. And I do have so much privilege that a lot of my family does not have. And music is one of them. Music has been, I've played in a band since I was 14, the same guys, which is kind of unfortunate for me, actually. I'm just kidding.
In what way?
Just, I guess, like, I didn't know that most bands, like for a band to stay together for years and years is like a really rare thing. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Again, that's what happens when you live in Grass Valley. You don't know all these great things. So, but I've been with the same guys since we were in high school. And so we sound super great together. And I guess we're kind of a crutch for each other, that we haven't reached out and like done new things with new people because we're so comfortable together. And we do sound really good together. But that's my happy spot, that playing music, especially if we're in some dive bar somewhere playing old rock and roll and everybody's having a good time. I mean, like, that's just my heaven. It's my heaven. I love it.
So where did you play before COVID, of course, but
Just around, I mean, we were playing at the Dewdrop in the Golden Era and, all around town, play a lot of weddings and parties, and which are becoming more and more retirement parties as we all get older.
yeah. Things change.
Things change. How old are you? Do you mind if I ask you how
Oh
old
yeah,
you
I'm
are?
42.
Okay, you're still a baby. All right. That's, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just going to ask, I'm sorry. Were you going to ask?
Nope, that was it. I just
Okay.
want to know how old you were.
Yeah, I'm 42. And what I wanted to ask was, are the songs covers, or are they originals, or what?
Mostly covers. We've written some things together. It's funny because like one guy is more, I wouldn't say necessarily all like Christian rock or mellow rock. And then Brian Millhouse, he's absolutely country. And our drummer Robbie Penn kind of goes all around. I think he's pretty happy playing whatever, but I love rock. Like
Right.
I'm a Guns N' Roses, Queensryche. I like it pretty hard, and it's my favorite. And so there was a few years we played where I didn't play bass and I just got to sing, and I got to pick all the music, and I was booking the band, and we played pretty hard rock, and that may have lasted me for an entire lifetime. I'm not sure. I'd like to do it again, but yeah, just a lot of good rock and roll, really good sound, because we've been together so long. But I would love
Now,
to do more originals.
are any of the members a part of the Nisenan Tribe?
No, but the funny thing is that they all have Native ancestry, pretty strong Native ancestry, I think. I don't know if Brian does, but I know Jonathan and Robbie both do, from tribes. They don't know, they don't have a lot of connection, but have pictures of like great grandma who's almost a full blood. And it's really trippy. We were trying to play at this big Indian festival, and it said like they had like 75% of your band has to be Indian, and they're all like, we're Indian, and I'm like, you guys are stupid. No, you're not. And they actually were, and I like didn't even know my whole life of knowing them, and I was like, what? And
Really?
I'm like, that's dirty though. You can't just be Indian one day because this form says your band has to be Indian. That's not the way it works.
Right.
That's not okay.
So did they, I mean, they've obviously watched your evolution, and seen, I mean, what were you doing? Like, okay, so you went to NU, and then what did you do after that?
NU, a
Like
little bit
just
of
for
Sierra
work?
College, when we moved from Hawaii, my dad's cousin Stephanie Covert married Frank Millhouse. So we moved from Maui to right onto the Millhouse Ranch, and my parents worked on the ranch there at Millhouse Ranch. And Brian Millhouse is the one, who's I'm in the band with. And so lived there. I was a counselor for the boys there for a while. And then, God, what did I do? I don't know. I think just played music most of the time. I've never really had, like what my mommy always said, when are you going to quit playing around with music and get a real job? It's just been the band. And then I took care of both my grannies. They lived with me, my mom's mom and my dad's mom. I bought a house in the same house that I learned to refinance. I was really good at it. And so I still have the same house, and the mortgage is like way more than it was when I first bought it, which probably isn't another cookie thing. I just learned to refinance, and, we got central heat and air, got my mom a truck, all these things that, you learn to do when you're learning to refinance and pull the equity out of the house over and over and over again. But I took care of both my grandmas there. My mom and dad both live with me, and my daughter and my husband, and both grannies when they were alive. They're both passed now, but mom and dad had been separated for 30 years. So it's really interesting dynamic, and not a huge house. Luckily there's an upstairs where my husband and my daughter and I are most of the time. But both their moms lived there with me. and well, with all of us, and we took care of them until they passed away at home, because that's another thing, like you can't, I don't mean to say it that way. I shouldn't say it that way. We don't send our elders out of our household to be cared for by somebody else.
Right.
While other people do, and that's absolutely fine. That's not something, that we do. And so that was actually years and years of taking care of them, because they ended up, one granny was bedbound, and that was a lot of work. So I guess that's what I did with some of my time. I forget, it's
Right.
all a mush together, Brian. It ends up like, was it last week or was it 20 years ago? I can't remember.
Yeah, I feel that way too. And especially, with the loss of eyesight, everything seems like a strange dream.
How long's that
So
been for you that you've lost your eyesight?
how long has it
How
been?
long? Yeah.
It's I have a condition called Usher syndrome type 2A, and it causes blindness and deafness. And I had hearing loss at a very early age, moderate hearing
Yeah.
loss. So I've worn hearing devices for most of my life, but I felt whatever, I guess, I don't know how to say it. I felt able-bodied or normal, whatever that means, for most of my youth. And then it's a slow degenerative disease. So um, when I think I started at about 12, I started to have issues in low lighting. And then it kind of like developed, and I mean, I drove up until I was 30,
Okay.
and but it's been a slow, just degeneration. So it started out with not being able to see well in low lighting, but with, like a flashlight or headlights, I was fine.
Mhm.
And then peripheral vision loss, then some kind of distortion, which is called photopsia, which is kind of like, the way I describe it is, when like a flash photo,
Mhm.
somebody takes a photo and the flash, and your like eyes are seeing
Yeah.
the kind of
After a while,
stars.
yeah.
Yeah, that it's like that, but it started out slow, where it happened a little bit, and then it started happening more and more. Now it's like all the time. So I have this
Oh,
constant visual noise, and plus then I have like things, like I have like a cataract in my left eye. It's really bad. And
wow.
so it's just it's a very slow degenerative. And actually I lost most of my eyesight within the last couple of years of because a couple of years ago I was able to watch television, and it was be relatively normal. I mean,
Mhm.
unless it was like an action movie where I could track the fast cuts,
Mhm. Oh,
um,
yeah. Okay.
and so
Mm.
yeah, it's been it's been painful, and it's been frustrating, and I'm still dealing with it. Like right now I'm dealing with just the fact that now I'm getting to the point where I really just need to stop seeing at all, because it's too
Yeah.
much distortion,
Oh, wow.
and it's not giving me accurate information. It's giving me distorted. I'm running into walls a lot more in familiar places, which is odd, but it's because my eyes are not giving me accurate information. So I'm thinking I'm somewhere else and I'm not. So
Yeah.
it's been shitty.
Yeah. I bet.
But it's just what it my wife hates when I say it is what it is. But
It is what it is, though. But that's the way it is.
so I mean,
You can't get around that fact. When things are the way they are, that is what it is.
yeah, and the only thing I can do is adapt, and I kind of use it as a parallel, because we're all um, forced to adapt to climate collapse,
Yeah.
and we're
Absolutely.
witnessing it with the constant wildfires. California is on fire every year, and then I mean, there's
Absolutely.
so many things happening all over the world, with our biosphere is collapsing essentially, and it's
Yep.
and so it's kind of a parallel. I'm forced to adapt to my own loss of eyesight and hearing. I'm also losing. My wife just said recently, she's like, "Your hearing is getting shit. It's really shitty
Yeah.
now." And I'm
Yeah.
like, ah. I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't want to fucking deal with that right now. I really
Right.
don't, because I'm
Right.
already dealing with the eye thing. And so, yeah, but I use it kind of as a kind of like parallel paradigm that, it's if I don't adapt, I'm gonna have a miserable life. And I think that's kind
Absolutely.
of what we're faced with as human beings, is forcing ourselves to adapt and live in a different way.
Yeah.
than we've lived, because obviously it's not working.
Well, yeah, and some of us, I mean, where's the line though? Like, you're physically being forced to adapt. There are a lot of folks who are going to keep skating and skating and skating and skating before they hit that wall, you know what I mean? And really stretch it out instead of making a conscientious decision that, wow, I'm getting squeezed a little bit. Maybe I should change some shit right now, and
Yeah.
that's the part that does worry me every once in a while. I to start disregard, not all of us, but a lot of folks that, out of sight, out of mind though.
Yeah.
Like seeing Wendy, we were driving up the freeway from somewhere and I saw for the first time, not to bring up really sad stuff, but like the little cow sheds where they keep the baby cows on the side of the road to raise them for veal. Like, I knew it existed. I don't eat veal myself, but I eat beef. But I saw it and I was so horrified. And then back into the same thing about telling the lies and like all this stuff, out of sight, out of mind. Just seeing it like right there and having it in my face, I was just horrified. I was horrified. Do I stop eating meat? Of course not. The way that we treat our food, that we put in our body, that becomes us. Like, most people just don't even know. We don't even think about it. Don't think about where the water comes from when we turn on the faucet. We don't think about, where the food comes from. Not everybody. I know a lot of people here in our community are extremely conscientious about these things. And, but it's all not normal for this landscape. Like, even the farming, like, we did not farm here. It was all encouraging the natural landscape and everything that grew here naturally. Like, the most truly, even farming is not sustainable. Like, somebody has to go out and dig that shit up and plant it and make it, grow it and harvest it. And like, in nature, the bounty that especially was here in this landscape, it was, I guess I should say, but it grew there naturally. Like, it was there. You just had to tend it a little bit and not overpick it, and it would always be there for you. And I don't think any of us, especially the newer generations, like, we can't even conceive life without lights. How are we going to conceive that? Like, how do we, when I think of like the stuff the tribe has to impart about fire and sustainability and all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, how are we even having a conversation when there's a dam right there and right there? Like, there's some real obvious things, yet you want to know all the secrets. It's like right. I mean, some of the topics are just so big. They're just so far from what my grandpa would say. If
They're so far from what?
From what my grandpa would say.
Right.
Like, if you're going to hurt, what are you going to do? Is that going to hurt someone else? Then don't do it. If you're going to take that and leave somebody else with it, don't do it. Or without it, don't do it. I mean, just the most logical, like, human-based decision-making abilities that just really, it feels like that kind of thinking doesn't even have a place in the world today. I don't know. And those are the things I try not to go down too deep into, because I do get that. That's the moments, especially when it's dealing with any kind of animal, like, I get a little hopeless feeling because I feel so guilty. I'm like, what we're doing to everything, just making humans the top of the old food chain, and like we're all that matters. And in all the old Indian stories, the humans are the stupid ones. We're learning from the animals who are so much smarter than us, the bear, coyote, the condor. Everybody's smarter than people. We're the ones that they're just like rolling their eyes at all the time. And I don't know how we walk ourselves off the plank. I don't know how we do it at this point in time. I don't know how we do it. And me telling some old stories about how we did fire in the landscape, isn't going to change the speeding locomotive. I shouldn't laugh. It's horrible, but
It's, well, I mean, it's if we don't laugh, we're going to cry. We're going to weep all the time,
Absolutely.
you
Absolutely.
know? And, I think about it. I mean, I'm constantly with my work, I'm hearing about the effects of the mining in our water. Like I'm hearing people like saying, my well has lead, arsenic, and
Cadmium.
mercury in it.
Yeah, mercury, cadmium, arsenic. Yeah, there's a whole little plethora, nice little goodie bag of leftovers from the mining industries.
And I don't feel like it's really talked about. And then there's the new mine, the Idaho, well, I mean, not new, but they're reopening the Idaho, Maryland. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing?
No, and those poor people that live out there, and the one lady has been saying for when they started doing their test, she's like, suddenly I'm getting these migraines that I never had before. And they're like, all eye rolling at her. Oh yeah, well, it's this amount of decibels. It's impossible. And, I remember the people talking about that low sonar, that the Air Force or the Navy uses, that it affects them and they can hear it for like miles and miles and miles, and it's affecting their sleep and all this kind of stuff. And they're just like told, oh, absolutely not. You're crazy. Like, you're crazy. That, I guess that's the label that sets everybody off the hook. Well, you're crazy. And I've heard some pretty bad stuff going on with that mine. And we've been asked to jump in on the conversation. And, we jumped in on the Centennial Dam conversation pretty heavily. And I mean, that was hard. It was very long. I think now that the board has changed, that may be a mute topic now. But now, I mean, of course, there's something right behind it, right? Okay, well, we got the dam and now that's okay. But now what about the mine? And it's just that the work is exhausting. Any kind of environmental protection work, protecting the animals, protecting the environment, you're talking a lifetime of work. And how does anybody deal with it without feeling sorry for themselves and going home and beating their parents and stuff?
Yeah.
Kidding, of course.
It's some heavy shit. And
it is absolutely heavy. And again, though, if everybody just takes one step toward responsibility, even if it's just learning about it, even if you think you don't believe in climate change, or you don't really care or think about where your water comes from, if you're not in an area that's affected by a wildfire, or if you haven't thought about just the animals on the planet, like cruelty, or the chickens where they cut their little beaks off so they can put more of them in a cage together because of Kentucky Fried Chicken or whatever, which I eat, by the way. Again, I have to go home and cut myself because I feel guilty. But, even if you don't believe in any of these things, what my grandpa would say is, oh, you might want to learn a little bit about that for yourself. That's all. Take a step out of what you believe, absolutely, and pretend that you're on the other side. Like, it's always the other side. I do this all the time with my politics. I'm like, let's pretend that I don't know everything like I think I do. And I'm going to put myself on the other side and try as hard as I can to believe the way they believe, just for a minute. If we all did that, I think, we'd be that much further into actually surviving as a species on this planet, not blowing ourselves up. Because that's where it seems like it's all going. I don't know.
Radical empathy is definitely, I feel like, essential to our survival.
Empathy. Ooh, that's nice. Radical empathy. I like that. Radical. Yeah,
a friend of mine is, she's doing a lot of work on racial justice, and she talks a lot about radical empathy. And I think there's an entire book on it, and it's been discussed for a while. But I think it's something that needs to be discussed a lot more.
It should be. Just for a minute, even if it's 5 minutes out of your week, it's just pretending. Just try as hard as you can to believe what that contrary person believes, and see, does anything light up for you? I mean, I've actually had a couple things where I'm like, I can see how that could be true. I mean, I'm not fully, but kind of enough to not hate anyone.
Right.
Where I don't want to go. I don't want to hate anybody. I really don't.
Yeah, it takes a lot of energy, and it's destructive. And I mean, I was just did a post on my Facebook page about my own self-hatred for having, experiencing this, disability, that,
Yeah.
I mean, that's embodied in ableism and the culture that, you and I were born into, it's a patriarchal,
Yeah. The little
society.
tiny
And
box, the tiny box. And when you're not in the box, you loathe it. Loathe, loathe, loathe. Yeah. I used to feel that way about Grass Valley. It's like, why me in this tiny town? I'll never have a life. Kind of, maybe not that deep, so that kind of loathing, but similar, like this place sucks. I
my
know
wife,
everybody and everybody knows my family, and it's not, I couldn't do anything. I always get caught, and it's just so funny. Couldn't do anything. Maybe I was bad at sneaking. I don't know.
bad at what?
Sneaking.
Oh, right. Well, my wife is going through a similar experience because she grew up here. She grew up in poverty, and everybody knows her. And she escaped. She went to Oakland and built a life there, and then LA, and she found her tribe. You know, people that experience a lot of similar things that she experienced: poverty, and Gandhi said poverty is the greatest form of violence. Um, and so she found a tribe in Oakland, and she's back here now because
Yeah, why? No.
well, I'll tell
I'm
you why.
waiting for this answer. Really? Somebody left and came back? Why? No, I love this place. I shouldn't be mean.
But what happened was this, she had a child, and it became a high uh, custody, a high, I don't know, high conflict custody thing, and it ended up that she couldn't move within an hour of here.
Yeah.
So she has to be here, and she's every day, I think she goes through the emotions of wanting to be in Oakland, where her family is. And I mean, so it's but she also wants to make this place better too.
Yeah.
She wants to change things, and so it's I think she has conflicting things, because there's her own trauma that of being here, and then and all the everything that's wrapped up in that, and then having longing to be somewhere else too. So
Yeah.
it's a thing. But I wanted to ask you a couple things. One was, since you have lived here for so long, like, what have you seen that has remained the same and changed, and what has been what are the changes that you've liked, and what are the changes that have been either disturbing to you?
Yeah. Well, sure. I mean, we used to go through town and know everybody. Like you knew, well, that has its, when you're trying to be sneaky, I guess when you're young, that's very much a deficit to your fun life. But, it's not that way anymore. Like, I grew up in a town where hardly anybody was a stranger. And now, because the population growth so much, I mean, it's rare that I go downtown or go through Brunswick or something and even see somebody that I know. So that is very different. And as much as I whine and cry about small town and all that kind of stuff, that is actually one of the pieces that sometimes I long for, that, to have that back. Like I wish it was that way. Which is really weird to say out loud, but that's something I miss. The thing that, working at Millhouse Boys Ranch, they had like two of the only Black people here were boys from this city that were at the Boys Ranch because they were in trouble with the law. And we went to the Del Oro one time, and I was probably, I don't know, maybe 12, 10 or 10, 11, 12 years old. And we were with Frances Millhouse, Grandma Millhouse. And she would always take some of the kids when they were, as a reward, they got to come to the movies. And so did we. Like we got our reward too, just like they did. We got to all go to the movies together. And a carload of, pretty young, I mean, maybe young 20s of guys stopped the car in the street and jumped out and was calling them F and N and blah, 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 tell them all this stuff. They better get back to wherever they came from. And I was just really dirty and disgusting. And at the time, Grandma Millhouse, she was like 4'11", I think, she's super short, small little Italian lady. And, you know, she got between them because they were coming up on the boys, and she got between them, and she knew them. She's like, I know your grandmother, and that's, you know, so-and-so. I can't remember. I wish that I could remember the family name because that would be so great. But I couldn't remember the name. But because everybody knew everybody, she was also able to really probably hit their red button of, uh-oh, you know. But that was so totally not uncommon. It used to happen at the fair whenever the boys would be there. They were the only people of color visible in town. You know, I mean, other people may not have, I mean, because when you get talked shit like that, like you don't want to go to town anymore. So maybe people were living here then. And so this would have been in like 70, 76, 78, somewhere around there. You know, and I went through high school the whole time, two Black kids in Nevada Union the entire time I was in school. So no diversity. So we're that's changing, you know. You can't force that kind of change. As right as it is, to have cultural diversity, you can't make it happen. It's got to change from within. You know, it's got to be, if somebody moves here and they're having bad stuff happen, the community needs to step up for them, because that should not be okay. And at the same time, you know, it isn't that long ago that this was happening, like full, I mean, probably around the country, but especially here because it was so non-diverse. And because we are seen as Indian people, light Indian people, we're passers. That's what they call us. You know, we're passers or whatever. And I know that's what my grandpa wanted for his girls. Like they were light enough now that they weren't called out and pointed out and targeted all the time. They could just maybe have a life and go to school and have a family and just live and be. And you know, I see that, like when somebody can't do something, I don't care why, their skin color, their size, whatever it is, like shit should not be, we should just, again, it's like the adults in the room talking to the kids, like, where are people's morals? Where's your sense of justice and like ethics? You know, where does that lay within people? How can these things be okay, especially as far down the line we are in some of these conversations about, you know, social justice and racial justice and equity of all kinds. And I that makes me sad, and yet I also feel proud sometimes. Like I know that growing up in a tiny town like this, there was no exposure to anything, and you can't just expect people to get hit with a magic stick and suddenly be like, whoa, hey, you know. And on, like, there is a little tiny slice of where people need to be able to go, oh, and like change a tiny bit. And I'm always very, very kind in that moment, very kind. I don't want the defenses up, and I want to be like as gracious as possible for people who just don't know. They've never had an experience. That's not necessarily their fault. I mean, you can blame the town if you want, you know, like this is a little place up in the hills. But very kind in that slice. And I think mostly, I mean, with exception of some, again, people, you know, that are not that we do a decent job right now, that people are listening. And I'm kind of proud of that, because I didn't think Grass Valley and Nevada City had that in them, to be honest. I really didn't. I'm like, this conversation about equity and, you know, Black Lives Matter and Indians and the, you know, genocide of California Indians, like it's just going to bounce off Nevada County into the atmosphere. And I've been pleasantly surprised. Not saying all the time that I'm happy about it, but I'm surprised. And as somebody who's been here forever, you know, I feel like I do have a little bit of a perspective in that when I'm surprised, I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm glad. Maybe we need to have the conversation twice as long and twice as soft, and just keep rolling. But I'm down for that conversation. But we're not getting the door, especially in our conversation about, asking our government agencies to do a land acknowledgement and include us in some things. They're listening. And that makes me happy. I'm surprised.
What?
And I hope it continues.
I'm sorry, say that again.
And I hope it continues. Like there's more room for more surprises, and I hope it just keeps rolling this way.
What are your thoughts? You're probably aware of this, but Wesley Clark Jr., who was he's a veteran, and during the Standing Rock protest, Veterans for Peace basically made kind of a protective ring around the Standing Rock encampment. And part of the process is is Wesley Clark kind of made Wesley Clark Jr. His regiment was one of the regiments that I think was a part of the Wounded Knee massacre. I could be wrong, but one of the things that he did is he kneeled before the elders and apologized for what his regiment did. And what are your thoughts on kind of a truth and reconciliation commission?
Well, again, if I'm more interested in just acknowledging the history of what happened here. I don't need an apology today. I mean, maybe later after it all sinks in that like, oh my God, people are listening. Wait, what? I don't know, other than the government itself or a person who did your own action against an Indian person here, or I mean, maybe if a family knew, I might feel that way. If I knew that one of my family did something and there was still an ongoing conflict, I may want to speak to the younger generations and try to smooth that over a little bit. I could see something like that happening. But as far as, I mean, if that man was directly involved, then of course that's very appropriate. I honestly sometimes I felt this way about the land acknowledgement at first. I hated it and then I loved it and I hated it. And we'd try to put it together and Amber would be like, well, can we send that land acknowledgement out? And I'd be like, no, I hate that land acknowledgement. It's just a bunch of, fluff. And it's just going to give people something they can read and then just like toss it over their shoulder and go on about the way. And I mean, I really had this, it took me a long time. We finally set it out and people have been using it and it's really doing its job. It's almost like I mean, it really has nothing to do with me. It's got a life of its own. And I find a lot of value in that. And at the same time, when it comes to, I mean, if apologies are going to happen, how can you apologize for something when the damage is still happening? I mean, what's the point? I mean, for that man, like you're using that Standing Rock as an example. I mean, that's really a personal thing that I see a lot of value in that, in making amends and unburdening souls on both sides of something like that. But for the rest of it, if, like Governor Newsom apologized for the genocide, California's part in the genocide. I mean, California gave money for Indian parts. Flat out, they paid for it and were reimbursed by the federal government. That's a fact.
Yep.
So for him to apologize while there are still non-recognized tribes and still tribes who need just the smallest thing, like, and we're promised, like healthcare. Like if you can prove you're a California Indian, you should have healthcare. I mean, at the very least, in all the buckets of all the stuff that's been promised over the time, if you're a California Indian and you're living in California, you should at the very least get healthcare. So while I appreciate, Mr. Governor Newsom, your apology and your attention to this, and for the first time, the first governor to admit it, an apology doesn't mean anything if people are still have no health care as a Native American person. And that's where, for me, you know, where I get my rottenness comes out, and I just laugh. I'm like, yeah, you know, and you and all the apologies, you know, where you can go. Because it makes no sense. Now, if you're really trying, and on one hand, you're offering something that the people really, really, really need, and with that is apology, oh, bam, that's like twice as good, you know, yay, that's awesome. But a lot of times for the truth and reconciliation, and I'm not talking about reparations, like we don't use that word. Well, there's a lot of fear around that. Like we're not asking for anything. I mean, if individuals see value in importance in this history, and when people learn and they're like, oh my God, I'm living on stolen land, I don't like that feeling. How can I help you? I love that. That's beautiful. It's real. But truth and reconciliation for what? Like, what's the outcome? Is there an outcome? I mean, is stuff going to be talked about in a real way? Then I am totally down for that. I think there's nothing more beautiful than for resolution. Like, otherwise it just sits and it turns and it brings everybody down. And how do you carry on into the future? I mean, it's what's happening to the planet. Look what we're still doing to all the animals. I just, you know, so, I mean, like, I'm not going to go out there and be on the front lines to save animals while I'm still eating Kentucky Fried Chicken. I mean, that's my bad. I'm an addict. You know, as Americans, we're addicted to everything. We're all addicts. So you can't get off the pipe, so to speak, you know, and, you know, get your chip or whatever while you're doing something else. I don't know. And I have this, it does sound jaded. It's a jaded, it's just like, it's an eye roll to me. But if it were real and there was something truly meaningful behind it, I mean, what more could you ask for, right? If it was real. But between that, if it was real and the eye roll is where I have an issue.
Yeah.
It's like, and looking at my watch, like, I'm sure, yeah, get with me in another 20 years and I'm sure we'll have the same conversation again, because I'm just like, eye roll, you know, sure, it's going to happen. But in the beauty of it, if it was real, I think truth and reconciliation is the truth part, especially first, the truth. Get the truth out there, let it simmer for a while. And then after everybody gets it, let's talk about some reconciliation. I just need to be in charge of things give me 10 years. I will put it all straight.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate hearing those words.
Thank you.
Could you please talk about CHIRP and how it formed and the acronym explain it just.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So it's the California Heritage Indigenous Research Project. And it was founded originally by Judith Lowry, who is a Native American contemporary artist. And she comes from Susanville area. So she's Pitt River, Mountain Maidu, and I believe she has some Washoe as well. And she and her husband moved here. I mean, when I had met her, I think they'd been here 12 years. I'm not sure how long they've been here now, but her dad was alive at the time, Leonard Lowry, and he had asked her what Indians you got down there, because a lot of time those old Indians knew each other from boarding school. And so she said that at that time she went looking for us and she couldn't find us. She's like, it's like a spaceship sucked you guys up. And through this long, weird series of events, we ended up getting in touch with her. And she was like, this is absolutely unacceptable that you guys are completely invisible in your homeland. And because she's an artist and she does a lot of social justice work, her dad was a Native American educator. So and she's just Judith. I mean, she's just, man, a Tasmanian devil. She's just, she's incredible. She's done so much for our people here. You know, and all those years ago, she was the only one, the only person, the only one, which came with this bag of I mean, she's so brave. She called herself the Wedge. Like at the time, there was another tribe here claiming to be from here, and they weren't, but they're all over the place. Things are getting dedicated to them. And she knew a lot of these folks, and they were from where she was from, up the hill. And she's like, what are you guys doing? Like, you know, I mean, just how things happen, you know. And she started out by using her art, doing some art for us, making big, gorgeous works. She funded our first, I don't know how many Nisenan Heritage Days, because she had the connections in the Indian world and the art. She brought in, you know, the basket weavers and the jewelry makers. And then I brought in some of my family, and we put together these very early Nisenan Heritage Days. And she really brought beauty, but she also brought like a context for me. Like I watched her put together a display once, like with the blackboard that just kind of folds out, and she took some pictures and found some pictures and printed them out and then put them on foam core and stuck them on the board. And suddenly and with some text, and I was like, whoa, like boom, visibility. It was such a trip. And, you know, so that's how it started. And then she's very vocal. She would say, what are you doing? Why are you backing the wrong people? These are the people from here. And she's like, you want some education? Here's some materials, you know? And she was not like me, where I'm always afraid. I mean, it gets like yawn, like Shelly's always scared. Mom would say, who was in the room when you guys talked about that? Like she was very nervous about this, you know? But because of Judith, everything started. So she started CHIRP, and it was really just cards and stationery. And she'd always say, well, CHIRP's going to take everybody to lunch. It was Judith who was taking everybody to lunch, you know? And so at some point in time, we realized that CHIRP could actually become, it should be a nonprofit. So that I was like, at the very least, like people could get a tax write-off for like all that she was giving, you know, like to the very, very least. And so we went through the steps, got it formed into the nonprofit, and got a board together. And then I was just doing the same work I was always doing, but then we had this vehicle to corral things, to ask for donations, to write for grants. I mean, it took quite a few years before it really got off the ground, and, you know, absolutely before I made any money. Then I started getting like $600 a month at some point in time. Somebody, I think on the board, donated enough for me to have a salary that year, and then started raising money. The more visibility, the more people that came on, it just, you know, how things grow that way. Like, but really, because I mean, I know she hates it when I, you know, ding her bell this way, but if, you know, and this is the thing, is like when a culture that is completely invisible was riding on the back of, I mean, of course, all of us in the tribe, but really riding on the back of her. Like she would go to city council meetings, and she would go to the county, and she would just like, you know, and then fund these heritage days and fund, you know, her and her husband are both photographers, and like she's taking pictures of me, and she had connections with News from Native California, Haiti Press, and Malcolm Margolin, and we wrote an article together. So, I mean, all these little tiny steps, step by step by step, has grown into what it is today. You know, and then people seeing us, people like Ember just falling out of the sky into my life, because she's a list girl and like very organized. And I am not that at all. And I was struggling, and there was too much. So now we've split into, I have my half and she's got her half, and it's too much again. So we need to, it's like cells multiply, you know, we need to multiply again. So I'm always, that's my new wish. And when I wish, is like for all those right people to fall into my life, you know, so I hope that they'll come, and I'll be ready to grab them up when they get here. But there are just so many areas. So everything that we would get from the federal government through the federal Indian programs, if we were recognized, we've been trying to replicate under CHIRP in some way, like language, when COVID came, I got a $20,000 grant and was able to give each tribal member $500. That's the first time that's ever happened. Things like that, really get these things off the ground. We're trying and kind of thinking about waiting on final approvals from everybody, but we may have a brick and mortar in Nevada City here pretty soon, which is just the next big leap. The language classes, the video, we just did this grant with the Nevada City Film Festival, Nevada County Arts Council, with a grant from California Arts Council, where we got this incredible film. I'm sitting in my set, like tonight, this is the set of my new video series that I have. And we have camera, lighting, sound, all this stuff, and we're being trained to use it all. Like all these things are happening because of CHIRP, and really initially because of Judith and Brad, her husband, obviously with his support as well. And it just continues to grow. We have, we just increased our board to 9 members. It's really, it's banging and it feels good. And, I'm able to increase Ember's hours for the next year. We just did our budget for next year. I need her on as a full-time exempt, but we can't afford that yet. And so all this money, I'm like, keep giving money because I need Ember. I need staff,
Right.
And the only way to get staff is to pay them. Go figure, right? And so it's just, CHIRP has really become the vehicle for everything that we can possibly do, and supporting the tribe in the federal recognition stuff. And really that is paying me to be in my position to do the work I need to do. Because if if I fall, everything's going to fall too. And we just can't have that happen. So, but we're right in the middle of this Nisenan Heritage Month, with a big fundraiser and putting out all this content on the internet. And it feels like we're in another big growth spurt, and it feels really good.
That's amazing. And what, this may be too complicated to discuss now, but if you can, what is it going to take to get tribal recognition?
So, we were, like I said earlier, we were in federal court for 8 years. Every other California Rancheria. So I guess I could give you a really tiny, brief, tight history lesson on this, or for the viewers who want to listen. In 1958, there was the California Ranchery Act, which terminated 44 California rancherias. And since then, all but 3 have been restored. So they all have their federal recognition back, except 3. And unfortunately, we're one of the 3. So historically, every California rancheria that took the government to court has won their case. So we were, that's why I'm always careful with what I think I know, or what evidence is showing me, because sometimes it's a bunch of hogwash. But every other tribe had been restored that way. We were pretty certain we were going to be restored that way. And then we lost our court case because of the 6-year statute of limitations. And the 41 other rancherias that were restored were also outside of the 6-year statute of limitations. So it didn't seem very fair or very just. So since we lost that court case, we're like, well, what do we do now? And it took some time, because I think people were pretty devastated. And it took a while to be like, get our bearings back to like, what are we going to do now? And I know some of those tribal council meetings after we lost were just like crickets. Like we all just kind of sat there like, this sucks. Now what?
Right.
And so now it's either, most likely legislative, so Congress, an act of Congress. The other strange thing is that we were originally recognized in 1913 by executive order, President Woodrow Wilson, and it had a lot to do with his wife, because I guess she was connected to the suffragette movement here in Nevada City. So, because I'm like, somebody had to know somebody. Like, how does this happen? How did he even know about us? It's just too weird.
What movement? I'm sorry, I missed that.
The suffragette movement.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So she was very involved with like Belle Douglas and the other people, the Ellen Sargents of the world, that were all here during that suffragette movement. And so Now, like our California Senator Kamala Harris actually knows who our tribe is, because other California tribes have talked about us, and they've talked about like maybe joint things together. Anyway, it's good that her and Dianne Feinstein, at least they know about Nevada City Rancheria. So now, she's going to be the vice president. And I'm like, wouldn't it be totally, totally weird if she could influence Biden and maybe they did an executive order for us? I mean, that's how it happened originally. So, I mean, it's not even that crazy. And it may even be more viable than trying to go through Congress. I don't know. But it to me, kind of the unknowns, actually, it's part of why I do the stuff we do, because I get kind of excited about stuff, and I'm very tenacious and I'm super curious. And I think if I have a good idea, everybody needs to know it's a good idea. So, I'm hot on the trail of that. And I think it's a good conversation. I'm excited to have it with her. I went through Emerge California, that trains you to run for office, in 2018. And a lot of the women in Emerge have either worked in Kamala Harris's office, worked as staff. So there's also some connections there that I'm interested. I'm intrigued. Like,
are you announcing your candidacy right now?
No, I was, when I went through that program, I had every intention of running for Grass Valley City Council. And I started getting a little nervous because I feel that I wouldn't have the freedom to act and move and do what I need to do if I'm in a position like that. And also, it's taking on a whole bunch of responsibility for our entire community when I need to be focusing on just our tribe. Like, I mean, I know that sounds really selfish, but it also, I want good political leaders out there. I want leaders who feel the way I do. Like, this is my responsibility. I can't get off the earth without doing all I can do for this planet and the inhabitants that live on this planet. And I want to see that. And I mean, I see it a lot in the Native American women that are running for office. That's what leaders should be, not to sit there and get a paycheck from an oil company. It's just not, I mean, whether people think that's cool or not, I just don't. I think it's a conflict of interest, and it shouldn't be that way. But, someday, I keep saying, if somebody would just let me be in charge, just give me 10 years, I will get all this shit straight, all of it. Everybody, I'll be like, psh, 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 psh. Smacking him, smacking her. Come on. Nope. Taking away their money from their special interest. Nope. You can't be in politics and have all that money. It's not the way it works.
Well, I mean, what I'm hearing is you're announcing your candidacy on the Blind Man in Black. That's what I'm hearing.
I will give you the first sneak peek when that happens. I promise.
Awesome. That is great. So, I know we've been talking for a while, and I'm sure you're tired, and but if you're willing to, I'd love to hear a song that if you could sing something that really has a deep connection for you, I would be immensely honored and grateful.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, I would love to. I'd like to. This song is the first song that I learned in Nisenan language, and it is to the sacred mountain I was talking about earlier. So it's a spirit song, they say, and the words are, I have you in my sights, I bring you offerings, and it's a luck song. We're asking for luck. So that sacred mountain is very powerful and very spiritual. And I don't know if any of you have ever noticed, when you go down the hill from Penn Valley and you're heading down, you can see the mountain, but it's like way closer than when you drive down a couple more corners and it's back in the valley where it belongs. And I keep asking people, like, does anybody else like see this? Like, the mountain's moving around. It's really trippy, because I feel that there's like a true literal spiritual aspect or reflection of that mountain that is super important. And so a couple people have said, yeah, I saw the mountain the other day and it absolutely was way closer than it was like 2 corners later. So, I mean, I think it's this immense force that I don't understand, but it's got significant meaning for us as a tribe. And it's where all life comes from, where we go and we die, where we eat our first spirit food, we see our ancestors in the great round house that's there, and then we go off to the Milky Way. And so I would love to sing that for you. I'd like to say before I do that I've really enjoyed the conversation, Brian. I love your openness, and I really enjoy the way we get into the conversation. It's just, I don't know why, I don't know what it is that's so different. You know, I've watched a lot of your other interviews and I just instantly feel kind of like at home. You know, I feel like we're sitting in the living room and we're all good friends already and we're talking about really fun shit. You know, maybe
You
it's 'cause you want us
swore.
all to
You
cuss.
swore.
But I
Thank
just
you for doing that, by the way. I feel more comfortable now.
Yes. Right.
Maybe-
But I appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time. Great conversations. It's all so important. I mean, really it is, it's our humanity we're talking about here, you know, and
the feeling is immensely mutual, and I should let everybody that is watching and listening know that we have not met before. This is our first like meeting, which is incredible to me. Before you start, I want to turn off my alarm because my alarm's been going off, and I don't want it to go off.
All right, and I'm going to take a drink over here.
Okay.
I'm drinking on my Red Bull, my fuel.
Okay. Hey Siri, turn off alarm. Oh, it's not working. I don't know, my phone.
I'm not hearing it at all.
Yeah, it's odd. Hey Siri. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's okay. Maybe, you know what I'll do is I'll just turn the phone off that way. It's not an issue. There we go. Oops. Now it's like calling somebody. Oh geez. I'm calling 911.
Oh no.
How did that happen? Okay.
Going to be a little excitement tonight when they all show up at your door.
They're probably going to show up. Okay, so I'm going to turn the phone off. That way we're not interrupted.
All right.
Okay, so whenever you're ready, take your time and we can get into it.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for hanging in there and watching. I just, good conversation. I love it. So usually in tradition, it's respectful, our sacred number is 4, so it's respectful to sing things in rounds of 4. And in the old days, they would sing rounds of 4 and 4 times 4 and 4 times 4, all those multiples of 4. And you can imagine it would go on for 4 days. And, you know, these things went on and on and on. And so I will sing 4 times around just because it feels right tonight. I don't always do that. It just feels good. So thanks, Brian. Vietnam, 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 pineta estumiani miamenam, leyu Vietnam, 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 pineta estumiani miamenam, leyu Vietnam, 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 pineta estumiani miamenam, leyu Vietnam, Vietnam. Whee!
Wow. That was beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that beautiful song. That's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Before we depart, I would love to do this again, and if you're willing and you have time.
Sure.
Um,
We could do this like 20 more times and we'd probably talk all night long.
I'd love to. So whenever you have time, I'd love to do this again. The other thing is, I know that there are uh, folks that are going to ask, how can they be in solidarity or support, what, or just contact you? What are the methods, and what are some of the, can they assist in helping with the building, or whatever it may be? Could you let us know?
Absolutely. So the best way to reach out is through our website, which recently has had a complete and thorough upgrade at nisenan.org, which is nisenan.org. And within nisenan.org, you'll find the link to the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan Tribe site, as well as CHIRP's website. Within CHIRP, we have, because this is Native American Heritage Month federally, I think Native American Heritage Day is November 27th this year. And so we usually would have had Nisenan Heritage Day on November 7th of this year. And on the 25th would have been our farm to table harvest dinner, which really has become our biggest fundraiser. It's just been fabulous. And because of COVID, obviously, we're not doing either event. So we started a GoFundMe for this $30,000 goal, which is a pretty lofty goal for a virtual event. But we brought both, sort of dissolved both physical events and brought it into Nisenan Heritage Month. So starting on the 1st of November, we've been putting out content, video content, stuff from the past. It's called Reflections: Today, Yesterday, Tomorrow. And so we've just been jumping all over the map with content, bringing something every single day.
Wow.
And yeah, it's been a lot. We're almost halfway done. I'm like, I was telling Ember yesterday, I'm like, maybe the events would have been easier. But it's been a challenge. But what's happened is everything, because of the new website, everything we're offering now is living on the website. So it's going to be there. And there's just, the more information we get up on the website that's accessible for people, the more the visibility grows. And our contact information is there. If you write to info@CHIRPCA, CHIRPCA, CHIRPCA is what I say, CHIRPCA.org, info@chirpca.org. That comes to both Ember and I, and she really helps me track communications, and she's so much better at that than I am, and keeps track. Have you answered so-and-so yet? And then the website, our emails, my phone number, everything you need to find us is there. We've got, right now I've got my artwork up in Nevada City in the Alpha building. So you can see some, it's Pe Amen. Those pieces are there that I did with Ruth Chase, Mira Clark, and Danny Joy. Those are up. We also have displays up in the Nevada City Chamber of Commerce. Grass Valley has a window display that's reflecting Nisenan heritage during this month. And there's just a ton of content out there. The videos, I just had a bunch of clips produced by the professionals that are helping us with our film and all the camera stuff that we got from the Nevada City Film Festival and that grant I was talking about earlier. And he produced like an intro and an extra for the show. It's just beautifully lit, great sound. That was not my production. It was the team from Nevada City Film Festival, but we hope to replicate that that they've set the bar pretty high, and we want to replicate that into the future. So there will be more coming out for the rest of the month, but that GoFundMe is the big thing. You know, if people want to support, of course, funding, I know everybody doesn't have money, but those, you know, $5, I donate, my mom donates, my dad donates, my daughter donates, my whole household, we give like $10 a month, and it's not a lot. I know people don't even have $10 sometimes, but obviously funding is the main line. You know, it gets right into the source of the needs, but there's always the creative aspect. Some of this, there's no template for recognition. There's no template for saving a culture. And sometimes it's us creatives that we just come up with an idea. I mean, if you have ideas, if you have ways that you might want to connect, it does not have to be funding. You know, sometimes that crispy idea that just is not in my head that you may think of, please don't hesitate to reach out and share your ideas with me. Who knows what the path is? And I think we have to pull it out of the air, literally, in our brains, and, you know, maybe from the ancestors if we're listen hard. Sometimes it's the idea and the connections and the networking and the community that I know my fundraising people would kick me in the face for saying this, but are even more important than the almighty dollar sometimes. So, so those are the ways you can find me. I'm around, you know, I do speaking engagements, and, you know, there's always a way to find us.
Can you please repeat those websites one more time?
Absolutely. Nisenan.org, which is NISENAN.org, and CHIRPCA.org. Or I'm sorry, the email is info@chirpca.org, which is info@CHIRPCA.org.
Wonderful. Shelly Covert, I am so deeply honored that you shared all that is alive within you, and I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. And I hope we can do it again. I was just thinking would be a great idea is the next time maybe you could do like a slideshow of your artwork or something like that. And
yeah, we could do something. We got a lot of gorgeous, I mean, you can see behind me, this isn't my artwork, but this is, you know, we've got the community art that was done through the Visibility Through Art program. And I have one painting. Oh, I have a few paintings actually, but yeah, I would love, I mean, the visuals, like Judith always said, you know, she always says the picture is worth uncountable words.
Right. Right. Well, thank you so much. And let's do it again soon. And thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. This is The Blind Man in Black. You can go to blindmaninblack.com, or you can go to the Apple Podcast, Blind Man in Black, or the YouTube channel. Same thing. All right, everybody. Thank you so much, Shelly.
Thank you, Brian.
You take care, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds great. Thank you. Good night.
Okay, we're going to have an awkward ending now.
Okay.
Here we go.
All right.